All right. Many of us can see plain as day why the onslaught of anti-LGBTQ plus and anti-trans legislation is a threat to all of our rights or freedoms, no matter our identity or sexual preferences. So, how can we make sense of the role technology plays in our collective choices, especially when it comes to healthcare? This week, I have Catherine Hofmann, a neighbor, a friend, and a professional peer. Kat is an impact-driven consultant, designer, and entrepreneur. She's the co-founder and CEO of QSPACES, which helps the LGBTQ plus community find friendly and competent health and wellness providers using a crowd-sourced platform. I'm so excited for this conversation. But first, welcome to this week's episode of Make Sense. It's a video podcast that simplifies complex issues at the intersection of tech and people. There are a lot of them. So whether you're totally hyped on artificial intelligence and ready for the robot takeover, I know who you are, or you want to crawl into a cave after deleting all of your social media accounts, we don't blame you. I'm here with my guests to help make sense of what's going on so you can design yourself into the future. My name is Lindsay. I'm a product market fit strategist, innovation consultant, and venture fundraising advisor. So let's make sense of a bunch of LGBTQ, queer, healthcare, and lots of issues, actually, because Kat, you're so diverse. If you're new here, subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Kat? This
Hey,
is a crazy time for the whole world and your community. How are you holding up?
I go back and forth between being hyper focused on what's going on and then just saying I don't feel I can do anything about it and I'm feeling overwhelmed and I just ignore all of it. And I guess I'm lucky enough that I can, put in some cases, to make the decision to step away and it's not going to harm me directly at that time.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's overwhelming. It you know, it puts a lot of people in just a bad mood waking up knowing there's, people out there that hate you so much and, we should move back into the shadows and, not be talked about and create these really unsafe conditions again. And it's just wild. People are so hateful.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
it's, I think that
Yeah.
for me, that's just makes me sad. People are so
Right.
hateful.
Yeah. I've spent a lot of time thinking about where that kind of hate comes from. And, in our city in Philadelphia, the big kind of protest right now is the Mothers of Liberty coming to our city.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, um, and I think a lot of that hate comes from fear of the unknown, from uncertainty, economic instability, like people being
Right.
scared of the bottom falling out, so they just want to protect themselves. But collective breathing would really help right now. And
Yeah.
I'm glad there are people like you on, making a difference and helping move things forward. uh,
Yeah. Thank you.
yeah. Let's start with our first segment. Crystal ball. What does the future hold? This is, you're excited. I love it. So, this is where I call out predictions for this year, and the experts, my guests, tell us their hot take. So, I'm going to rapid fire trends, and Kat, I want you to say, like, yes, I want this to happen, or no, please, no. Okay, ready?
All
All
right.
right,
I'm
because
ready.
we both live in Philadelphia, I have to start with this one. Cities leveraging technology to beat the heat. So 70% of the world population is moving to cities by 2050. Urban centers will double down on keeping everyone cool, public fountains, trees, awnings, and also real-time data and solar paint technologies. What do you
Love it.
think?
Love it. Love it. Let's do it. Yeah.
Bring it on.
I have my street tree was just installed
Yes.
a couple of weeks ago, and yeah, and I think
How's it doing with this drought? Is it making it?
I got one of those like donuts to slowly leak water, and yeah, it's doing really well.
Good, good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for those
That's
of
good.
you unfamiliar, Philadelphia does give out free street trees to homeowners that request them to increase the street cover and keep people cool. I also have a street tree, so it's a very awesome program. And yeah, I'd love to see, in our city, public fountains are a big deal here. People can
Right.
like kind of swim and hang out in them. It's cool to see the kids in them. I'd love to like learn more about solar paint technologies and see what else we can do in that area for sure.
Yeah, I've never heard of solar paint. I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yeah, we're gonna have to check that out. All right, so a couple years ago, pre-pandemic, you brought me to a meet up, like MEAT. Once we did that. So lab-based meats will hit more plates. So while the number of vegetarian protein sources that look like real meat has increased, we have yet to see the cell cultured cutlets in grocery aisles. Is that going to happen in 2023?
I don't think it'll happen in 2023, but I think people are more and more open to it, especially as the quality of like a fake meat increases.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, and I think even with real meat, you don't ask a lot of questions about how it got to your plate. So why start asking questions about a lab? It's probably a lot more sanitary and less awful than what's happening in a slaughterhouse.
right. Less impact to the climate too. Don't they say
Yeah,
the gas that
absolutely.
the animals emit is one of the bigger contributions to our climate? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So I do like that. There is a brand of vegetarian hamburgers that I bought that I thought were the bee's knees. They were so delicious. When I compared how much saturated fat that burger had in it compared to like a regular cow burger, it was astronomically bad. Like they had like
really.
150% more saturated fat in the vegetarian burger. So it's a little disappointed.
Yeah, it never occurred to me to look at like the nutrition,
Yeah.
like the
You're just like,
whole. I'm
it's
just like,
not
oh,
meat.
this
It
has to
must
be
be better.
healthy.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. So, you
yeah.
know, so you've been reviewing startups for VC for 4 years. So we're going to switch headlines.
All right.
Given economic austerity measures, VCs will stop hunting unicorns and start searching for workhorses. So going back to the basics, looking for resilient entrepreneurs, being more realistic about expectations. What do you think?
I think that's great. I think unicorns are overrated.
Yeah. Yeah, I do think unicorns are overrated. Although I did throw this out to an entrepreneur and investor out in Utah, and he said he doesn't think that VCs will stop hunting unicorns because that's like the name of the game. But on our side of the country, especially in a smaller um, communities like Philadelphia for venture capital, I feel like
Right,
we are always seeing startups that are workhorses more
right,
than unicorns. Like there's always a business model, not just like can we build and get people's data as fast as possible.
right. And I wish investors would adopt more social impact measures when they're considering investments and for that to be a real thing, instead of just like maximizing returns. I
Yeah.
mean, I get, that's the main goal, but I wish, you know, do we need to replace public transportation with privatized gig workers and things like that? Like, is that,
Hmm.
good for the cities? Is that good? I don't think Uber and Lyft had good a good impact on the way people are working and the type of jobs they have and things like that. So yeah, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, go for the workhorses.
I mean, we would love to see more of that. I actually had a thought this morning, why this is what I was journaling this morning. I have no idea, but about how I've always been a big proponent of go big and go home, not go big or go home, because it's quite depressing to go
Right.
big and then go home with your tail between your legs,
Right.
you
Right.
know? um, but like, and this is the weirdest metaphor, and I hope you go with me. I don't know where it came from this morning, but I thought, man, okay, if we were, like tribal people on the plains, hunter and gatherers, like, of course, there's the big game hunter that might, kill one buffalo a week or a month, and it's this huge celebration. That's like a unicorn. Like,
Right.
went super big, got this buffalo. We're going to have a huge celebration, eat a bunch. But then there's the one that goes out every single day and kills like 10 guinea hens and keeps everyone fed in between these like big
Right.
buffalo
Right.
kill, right? And it's
Yeah.
like we want to glorify the big buffalo kill. It just seems like so impressive to be able to do that. But
Right.
how appreciative are we of the person that's killing the 10 guinea hens every single day to keep the tribe
Right.
fed?
And it's like big game hunting in general, like today, it's like it's not for anything except for the trophy itself. Like
Right.
is it, are you feeding people? Is it having some type of impact? Is it useful? Or is
Yeah.
it just like, hey, look at this massive head and body and stuff, and it's.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm going off on a little tangent, but this Better Up is a unicorn that grew over the past decade in the coaching, HR, and mental health space. Are you familiar with Better Up?
Yeah, yeah,
No,
I've heard of
both of
them.
us are outside the enterprise, so we might not, see these things. But essentially, an employee works with an AI bot to be matched with three potential kind of life business coaches, and they can meet with each one, and then they select one. But one of the problems with this matching algorithm is that many employees don't like any of the three coaches that they get assigned. And then BetterUp doesn't have really customer support to help the employee get three new matches. So you get
Mm,
a lot of employees that are basically stuck in a maze and don't know how to get out. And so then there's no value. So when we talk
right,
about unicorns, BetterUp is a unicorn, but it's got some real fundamental flaws. And after it got its unicorn status over its first, 6 years, now a lot of competitors are coming in to replace it because that AI algorithm is not like ready for prime time.
right. And then not having customer support, which is kind of
Dumb.
silly.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
You became a
So,
unicorn. You became a unicorn because you don't have customer support on your operational expenses.
right, right.
But you're going to lose a lot of value because you're going to lose a lot of your
Right.
customers because you don't have that. So, all
Yeah.
right. So,
Yeah. B2B, like enterprise sales, like once you're locked into a contract and approved, like, it's just keep that going.
you're right. Right. So,
Doesn't
because
matter what
we're
the employees want.
what'd you say?
Doesn't matter what the employees want at that point. It's, hey, we're offering this service and enterprise
And the
sales and all
enterprise
that.
is just spending their budget and that's
Yeah.
it.
And they're
Yeah.
like, look what we provide.
Look.
This will
Look.
be a great perk for talent acquisition.
Yeah, it sounds good. And then once you get into it, it's terrible. But that's like the story of life, period.
Yeah.
Everything sounds good. And then it's just all right afterwards.
So,
All right, Kat, because we're eventually going to get to healthcare. This is one that I've been bringing up in a lot of the past episodes. I'm very interested in your take. Immortality as a service. So humans have fantasized about extreme lifespans. I can already see, for those of you listening on audio only, Kat is shaking her head. Humans had fantasized about extreme lifespans for millennia, but the age-old pursuit is now attracting fresh interest from VCs and tech companies. What are your thoughts? Give it to us.
it's dumb.
It's
It's dumb. I don't understand, like we're not meant to live forever. reaching immortality, like for what reason, you know? And it's still something that's only going to be accessible to the super rich. And that's, I think, another form of wealth hoarding. They can hold on to their seats of power, their position in the world, their money, the way they influence politics. Um, yeah, down with the rich. Like this is, we don't want, you're you hit your time and it's time.
It's time. It's done.
Yeah.
Right?
I
What's
mean,
the
I
what's
think I think just focusing on like quality of life for everyone instead of, a select few living longer.
I
Yeah.
agree with you. I My question is if the average so in the US the average lifespan is actually getting shorter, which for centuries we've wanted to see that number go up. Now it's going down. That's cause for concern. Um, but I always want to ask, like, how long does the average person want to actually live? And what is the delta between the average lifespan and how long people actually want to live? Because I don't know many
Mm.
people that actually want to live forever. Like, if you were given the
Well,
option, if it was free and you didn't have to pay much for it, would you want to live forever?
that's a vampire. You do have to pay. You have to eat people. That's the purpose of living forever is eating people. It's that
Living forever is eating.
I read like all the Anne Rice books who wrote like Interview with a Vampire and stuff like that growing up, and she made these characters so miserable and having these moments where it's like I wish I could die. Like this, it's so painful to just be this age for all of time, and I think that was something that stuck with me. Like as a like, yeah, I'm sure it gets boring and old, and everyone you love dies, and you have to start all over again. And
Right, right.
yeah,
I mean,
how boring.
my one of my grandmothers lived till 98, and probably around like her mid 70s, most of my conversations with her, if they weren't about all the paperwork that she had to do, which
Right,
was like always, it was about like this friend or that friend died. And I thought,
right,
man, if I live so long to see all my friends die, I might go cliff jumping without the parachute, right? I know
right.
that sounds really morbid. So then, like, someone gave me the argument recently because my mind has been on this immortality as a service for a little bit, but like,
Right.
well, what if all your other friends were gonna be like opting into this service?
I guess it depends what the service would actually be. Like what are the treatments or what are the, if if you're if it's like, oh, a pill, that's different from, spending 3 days a month in a some type of like anti-aging chamber or something.
Right, right.
Um, I don't know. And
And
I
then,
still think like it would be even if all my friends were doing it, but if it wasn't widely accessible, I'd be like, what are or like what's your goal for living longer, you know?
yeah, what do you want to
Um,
accomplish? Just to shoot the
right.
shit with each other for longer?
Yeah. And like, okay, maybe your body can live forever, but like what if you develop dementia and then you
Yeah,
have to live with, you know, not knowing you're just living in a fog for 20 years because you did all this like life extension stuff. And
yeah.
I bring that up because my dad's mom lived in a nursing home for like 15 years and didn't know she had dementia, didn't know anything, anybody. My dad's starting to lose his memory. And he was like, literally find a way to like put me down. I don't want to be in a nursing home for 15 years like my mom was.
Hmm.
And yeah,
Yeah,
he just
it's
wants to, yeah,
it's
grow old
important
or
we
whatever.
talk about these things because I think sometimes people are like immortality as a service sounds amazing. Let's do it. And then they don't think about any of the unintended consequences.
Right,
Right.
right.
Right. All right. So now that we're here in the healthcare realm, final trend, mental health will become the new annual physical. So 1 in 5 Americans experience mental illness. Um, do you think we are at a point where mental health, getting mental health support is not so taboo that people will just annual physical check in also on their mental health?
Yeah, I think insurance companies will be pushing for that. I think people who are aware of like the power of your mind and what how the effects it can have on your mood and your physical self, I think, just people talking about therapy is a hell of a lot more at higher rates than it was before. I mean, I know it's gone up. I don't know the number. And I mean, the fact that my mom has talked about therapy and that's been like a big taboo thing for her. And uh, yeah, I would love to see more people just check in with a professional every once in a while. And, I think it's really helpful to talk about what's going on in your mind.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do think insurance companies will push for it, and I wonder if primary care doctors will, start asking like a barrage of questions to try to give you some type of score or something on your mental health.
And I think there are those standard, like a 10 question assessment, like how often do you, stay in bed too long or not sleep enough or feel like you're not adding value to the world, things like that. Like there's a 10-question questionnaire
Oh,
that gives doctors an idea of where you are.
yeah,
So
I've
it'd be
never
cool. Yeah.
had that.
You've never seen that one?
Uh-uh.
All
They
right.
don't ask me anything about my mental health.
You don't?
They're all, not my not any of my primary care doctors say anything about my mental health.
No, I don't hear it from primary care. It's like my therapist or psychiatrist that checks in. It's like
Oh, okay.
once or twice a year there's this like really straightforward kind of silly assess like I think it's silly because I'm talking to them on a regular basis, but like
Right.
very simple assessment, and it'd be cool to see that in the hands of like a primary care doctor.
Yeah, that would be really cool.
Yeah.
And I just had my insurance company, they paid me they paid me to see a nurse that works for the insurance company a couple weeks ago. Like outside, and I see my primary care doctor once a year as needed and stuff. And so I think insurance companies don't always have the greatest intentions, but it was really interesting that they reached out to me, set up a schedule, and then at the end of it, she was like, "Okay, you'll be getting a gift card in the mail, like a Visa gift card." And I was like, "Cool." Like,
Yeah. All
like
right.
nothing new happened in that session or anything. But yeah, I thought that was really interesting that the insurance company was pushing for that.
They wanted to do their own check-in.
Right?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is fascinating. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll have to figure out what that is all about and why that's a new thing.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. I'd like to see insurance paying for more preventative stuff like acupuncture. I know that they will give award people for going to the gym and stuff, but you have to do quite a bit of work to get that.
Yeah. And you have to
You
take
know.
like a sign-in sheet and someone
Yeah.
sign. Yeah.
It
It's
reminds me of phys ed in like elementary school or middle school where I had to like track my physical activity outside of gym class and like keep get initials and stuff. I would always end up faking it at the end.
so weird.
Gym, I know you're quite a like athlete. Gym, I was always my like risk of getting a C in
Oh, I
in
love
middle
gym.
school. What'd you say?
I love gym. It was a favorite part of my day.
Yeah, I know. I know you're big into sports. So let's move on to our second segment. What do
All right.
you know? In What Do You Know? Us relatively intelligent tech ecosystem insiders discuss some hot mess that's made national news. There's a lot of them. We don't claim to be experts, but we may know more than you do. So this time around, I have just a few headlines, Kat, and I want to get your reaction. So
Okay.
the first headline is that Elon Musk, man, I hate this guy,
I
bans
hate Elon Musk.
you hate Elon Musk.
So annoying.
He's so annoying. Elon Musk bans the word cisgender from Twitter and calls it a slur.
I haven't heard that because I deleted my Twitter account like 2 months after Elon bought it, and I just don't pay attention to Twitter, and I just track when his spaceships blow up, when the Teslas blow up. That's what I track. So no, I mean, how is that a slur? I He's so dumb. He's
He's so
so dumb.
I just don't understand. You know, there's like a good villain has like a backstory that explains why they are the way they are. Like the Joker, the movie The Joker, you know,
Right,
that was freaking amazing,
right.
to try to explain the backstory of where all this anger came from. And Elon Musk is like this villain with a backstory that like doesn't make me understand him. Like I don't get it.
Maybe
Uh,
he was like born in the emerald mine, you know?
he was
Like
born in the what mine?
the emerald mine that his parents own. He was
Uh,
something with the being underground, and I don't know. But also, I think rich people, the super rich, think they, because of the money, they have a lot of power, and they can, unfortunately, they can set rules. Like you now on a very well used social platform, you can't say the word cisgender, but you can still say the N word, and like.
yeah. Does it? Yeah, right. So I know that that Twitter does have a new CEO, which brought advertisers back to the platform. But this other headline I saw that was interesting was that major brands are back on Twitter, but their ads are starting to line up with racist and discriminatory content. So they're kind of getting kicked in the butt for
Right.
making that move, which serves them right. What would you
Yeah.
say?
I mean, just don't boycott Twitter.
Yeah.
As long as that he's going to keep doing stuff like this, like, and he's still very much in charge. If he's not CEO and if he is just some type of like product manager, then he needs to step back, but he just can't help himself and has to get involved, and a very fragile man.
He is a very fragile man. So, next headline: why artificial intelligence is set up to fail LGBTQ plus people. Have you, with the, everyone talking about ChatGPT and generative AI, have you gone down that road? And what have you been hearing as far as, AI and minority communities?
Right. Um, I mean, I think there's bias written into algorithms. There's plenty of research to back that up. And so, yeah, I can see why the code wasn't written, the algorithms weren't written with minorities in mind, and people living on the margins and stuff. So that makes sense to me. I've been like playing around with like a little bit of everything that makes sense for me in terms of AI. And now it's just being built in as a feature, to a lot of different things, like, oh, generate, I use Elementor on the back end of WordPress websites, and now they have like a new feature where you can generate images. Like, instead of going out and finding a stock image, you can, type in your prompt, and then that will generate the image for the website. And I'm like, that's
Wow.
cool, you know?
Yeah, that's pretty cool. But
Yeah.
because AI tends to rely on existing norms and the fluidity and complexity of queer identities kind of makes it challenging for AI because AI
Right.
prefers like static models. So have you ever had where you've like searched, like put in something like lesbian doing XYZ and it's like an offensive picture that it's generated because it's
I
relying
haven't
on
found
existing norms?
Right. I haven't found anything offensive, but it's offensive that it's all like pride flag related.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's not like, the queer community doesn't walk around wearing pride flags every day. Like, I
Yeah.
don't wear a t-shirt with a rainbow on it, or like socks with a rainbow on it every day. Like, it's so corny. And I think a lot of stock images too, but particularly AI, it's like they don't know how to show, a same-sex couple, or a queer couple without pride flags.
It's like you don't
And
need the pride flag if you see two women holding hands, right?
oh no, they're best friends. Yeah, there's
I
no
know. So
resist burns.
the problem with a lot of AI is that, again, it's trained on existing norms, and so we're talking stereotypes, and then they become extremely reductive in their
Right,
representation. So that's, you know, exactly what happens. You type in queer and every picture has a rainbow flag,
right,
instead of representing like the diverse array of humanity that might identify as queer.
right. And
Yeah,
recently I found, especially with all like drag queens in the news, it's like you search for queer, the LGBTQ community or something like that, and it's a lot of drag queens. I'm like, that's not, that's not, that's just a little subset of the LGBTQ community or drag queens. Like, why? It's like the headlines or like just the amount of attention on that is affecting what is being generated. And
exactly. Another cool place, though, I've seen where AI has been built in is Quora, which, you know, was I don't know if it ever was labeled a unicorn, but it was one of those very Silicon Valley fad like websites to, you know, Q&A. But
oh
now
right,
you can go to Quora, and there is like a button that will generate like a summary of everyone's answers,
that's cool.
like using AI, right? So then it
Yeah,
comes up with a summary on the fly, or, you know, can add to it based on other related questions, which I thought was very interesting.
I mean, I set up a Zap for so I can when I save a article to Pocket, it goes through a chat GPT prompt to basically like summarize this in 2 paragraphs
Shut
and
up.
give me like the two stats, and then that goes into an Airtable. Then I have a list of it has the headline, the link, and then the summary, and I can like speed read through different kinds of articles that I'm probably, especially long form ones, like I'm not going to read that whole thing. Click a button, then I can go into Airtable and you know figure
That's
out what's going on.
incredible. That seems like a feature that Pocket should build right in. Is if you save something on Pocket, it can just generate the summary for you, and you can
Right.
choose to read it or
Yeah,
not.
exactly.
Shoot,
And
that
Pocket's
is
also
some
good
early
for getting on
evangelist
paywall.
behavior, Kat. What did you? I'll get to that in a second. What were you going to say?
It gets around paywalls.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because Pocket can get around paywalls.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now this is like
Little.
learning a secret, like when I learned about Napster or how to do download torrents. Like, shoot,
Right.
now I know. Because, you know, the Philadelphia Inquirer wants to paywall us out of every relevant article that they have. And maybe I should give
Oh, I'm
them.
a subscriber.
I,
Subscribe. You have to support local journalism.
you're right. You're right. Thanks. I will. So says the person that, like,
Yeah. Fuck
uses.
everyone else, but local journalism. You know,
All
we need
right,
it.
all right, okay. So the next and final headline, and this will bring us into your area of expertise and what you do with QSpaces. So Florida just signed into law license to discriminate. It's a healthcare bill allowing doctors to refuse treating LGBTQ plus patients. So this is not just about trans and gender affirming care. This is about anyone that identifies as LGBTQ plus.
That's so fucked up.
It's so fucked up. What
Um, I'm not
you're
surprised.
you're
I'm
not
not surprised.
surprised, Ron DeSantis.
Right. And it's no one has been stopping doctors from discriminating and refusing care, especially for trans people anyway. And so like making it into a law that it's legal, I mean it's a scare tactic. It's basically saying if you're queer, don't search out healthcare. Don't go to primary care doctors. Like, I mean, we already have really high rates of avoiding care and using the emergency room as first points of contact because we wait until it's an absolute emergency because of shit like this. And that was before it was a law. It was just you never know what kind of provider you're going to get walking into a hospital or outpatient place or whatever, a clinic. Um, yeah, I mean, Ron DeSantis is a clown, and he's a bad man. He's evil.
Yeah,
He is a villain.
he is a villain.
And I
So,
just want, like, why isn't, like, God striking down our villains left
yeah.
and right, you know? Or something. Why aren't we having a lot of, like, why couldn't he been on that submarine to the Titanic, you
Right.
know?
Yeah. Right. So, in our final segment, we're here, deep dive. I want to talk more about the queer community's experience with healthcare broadly and specifically. So, before the current onslaught of the legislation, like what we just discussed, this was already a problem you set out to solve back in 2016. So,
Right.
can you share with us both important statistics that highlight the problem, like how many people avoid going to the doctor, or even talk through like an anecdotal experience, whether it's yours or someone in the community that can highlight the stress of even maybe what you just talked about of, going to a new primary care doctor and just not knowing if they are sensitive to the LGBTQ plus kind of perspective and life.
Yeah, absolutely. In my own experience, I've had uh, bad situations with providers and therapists and primary care providers. And, I was diagnosed bipolar when I was when I was 19. And I think I was being bullied in college for being gay by one of my golf teammates. And I think and my parents were very mad that I was gay and like out in college. And I think that triggered a psychotic episode.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that was cool. I'm gonna live with that for the rest of my life. Um, and after that, like needing medications and having to go see psychiatrists, in a lot of cases, also having to see a psychologist or a therapist to access these medications. And I would just be trapped in a room with someone who was homophobic. And it's like, well, I can, not say anything about my personal life anymore, or I can go find a new doctor, which could take a while, and I may not have access to medications that I absolutely need in that time for however long that would take to find a new doctor. And
Yeah.
then last year, or like 2 years ago, I went to Jefferson and
Jefferson's a hospital system in Philadelphia, for those of you unfamiliar. Go for it.
yeah, and they're like, we're in the neighborhood, we're like the most LGBTQ friendly place you can be, and all this stuff. And you know, and for transparency, they invested into QSPACES back in 2016, and they wanted to use it as an internal tool, which I didn't want because it needed to be all doctors and accessible to everyone, not just their system. But I went in for acute neck pain, and I just went to the doctor talking about my my neck, and that was it. We didn't talk about anything else. It was specifically for that. And then it happened again, and I'm like, I was trying to remember what happened the first time. So I go into my chart and to see the notes, and because I couldn't remember, which I never did before, and the doctor wrote in all caps transvestitism in my medical chart. And I was like, what does that even mean? And it's like,
If that's not a word and that's not
like,
accurate for you, right?
yeah, and like no one, like it's, I mean, I don't think any the I can't even remember the last time I heard the word transvestite.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to Google it because, like, what's transvestitism? And it's basically like it's almost like a sexual, you get like you're aroused by dressing like the opposite gender.
Okay.
And I was like,
What does this have to do with your neck pain?
what does this have to do with my neck? Like, why is this in my chart? Like, is it because I look gay and you didn't know how you needed to make a note of that in your chart, like why?
Right.
Like we didn't talk about like my sexual history, even if we did, like to put transvestitism as I guess she thought I was just wearing like men's clothes and I was too masculine. And
It's
then I was like, maybe, what if I was identified as trans and or something,
so
and
it's like
like
you
this
don't
would,
want to go back to see this doctor.
oh,
And
no.
then you're insecure because what about the next doctor that
Right,
comes in and reads those notes and you're like, "Hi, I know you read these notes and I have no idea why she wrote
right. Like,
that." You know?
I'm not a transvestite. Like, is that my opening line to the next doctor? No one else has brought it up, but I'm like, oh, this word is like in Jefferson's system.
Right.
And it's so strange. But the weird thing was like leaving that appointment, everything felt fine. Like I didn't feel like she was being, withholding or was like upset, or I didn't feel like there was some type of like discrimination or bias or even just like a moodiness in her care. And so it was weird to go back like over a year later and then see transvestitism in my chart. And then worrying, have other providers seen this and is that affecting my care somehow?
Right. Right. Yeah. I remember when we worked together back in 2017, 18, you had some really interesting stats about how many people in the community avoid even just going for a regular primary care visit. Do you remember any of those off the top of your head?
Yeah, I pulled a couple out. And so these stats are from the Center of American Progress, NIH, CDC, and the American Psychiatric Association. So, legit, uh, legit studies, and all within the last 3 years. So it has been updated since we talked, and things haven't gotten that much better. So 1 in 3 trans people have reported that they have been refused care by a doctor, which is unimaginable. I can't even. Uh, how do you refuse care to someone like it's part of your oath? Um,
Right.
43% of the LGBTQ community reported that discrimination negatively impacted their physical well-being. 20% reported doctors or providers have been physically rough or abusive. Uh, I think it's like 1 in 5 LGBTQ people in the last year or two have experienced discrimination that led them to not seek care in the future. And then, yeah, everything is way worse for trans patients. And then in trans and like the LGBTQ community, if you're a person of color, it's goes up even more from there because you're a double minority or you have these intersecting identities that are discriminated against. And so all of that discrimination and all of that fear of discrimination leads to higher rates of mental illness, cervical and breast cancer, suicide, heart disease, and other cardiac issues, and higher rates of severe alcohol and tobacco use disorder, among everything else.
Right.
Um,
Among just everything you have just being
everything.
a human being, right?
Yeah.
All the other risk factors. So,
And oh, one last one that I think is the most sad and the most uh, like this is with all the bills coming in to place now that are targeting LGBTQ healthcare, I think this number is likely to go up. Um, but in LGBTQ people ages 10 to 24, suicide is a leading cause of death. And that, like, access to gender affirming care is critical. I mean,
yeah.
these children, it's not a phase. It's not something they're like choosing to do because their friends do or they saw it on TV or they like a drag queen read them a book. Like this is, this is real. This is people's real identities, and if they can't, you know, not necessarily reconcile that, but if they can't get the care they need and the treatment they need and the support they need, I mean, they're committing suicide.
Right.
Like
Right.
kids are gonna die, adults are gonna die, people are gonna die because of these bills that are being passed through and proposed in across
Yeah.
these states, especially in, red states.
Yeah. We don't need
It's
the
so
AIDS
sad.
pandemic of the 80s and 90s to, have a massive impact on this community. Just the fear of not being treated well in a doctor's
Right,
office is enough. And that is terrifying.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, I imagine if I wanted, if there were, if it, thinking if a doctor could refuse me care in Florida, like, would I dress, like, may dress differently. I wouldn't talk, like, say I have a girlfriend. Like,
Right.
I just would, I wouldn't want to see that doctor again, but sometimes you just need health care. If
Yeah.
you have acute neck pain, like, I just need to see the next available doctor.
So you need to put a whole performance on just and act like a different person just to get your neck treated.
Right,
Right. Or you have to waste the 15 minutes you have with a doctor explaining that you are not a transvestite, nor do you get turned on dressing as one,
right.
right? A
Yeah.
transvestite.
Wasn't turned on during I didn't dress like a boy to turn myself on and go to the doctor about acute neck pain.
So sick. That's so sick. So one of the things that I always have found interesting and particularly just in working with any founders too is that micro communities online were already trading information about which doctors to go see. You,
Right,
with Q Spaces, were giving them a structured way to share that information so that it could, in a way, become static and live on for the next person that needs advice. So, how important is it for these online communities, whether it's Q spaces or local groups, how important is it for that technology to exist to support this type of, getting around this challenge
yeah,
and
absolutely.
finding doctors?
I mean, I think having a strong community is and a united LGBTQ community is the best thing we can do for ourselves. And so, whatever technologies or tools we can use to support that, I'm all in favor for. And
Mm-hmm.
when I first started Q Spaces, which came out of me moving to Philadelphia and not like what providers do I go to? I want to not have another negative experience. I didn't really know anybody. And so I was on Facebook in the Queer Exchange Philly Facebook group, and everyone is sharing this information. And part of me was like, oh, great, I have more information to choose a doctor that's right for me. But people quit sharing this information on Facebook. Facebook doesn't have your best interests at heart. And we saw that in Kansas, Facebook gave up the chats between that mother and daughter, and the daughter was uh, trying to get an abortion, and like they gave up that information to the police, and I think they got arrested. Like if there are laws in place, like we know that Facebook is will comply with the police,
Mm-hmm.
um, and much as like just taking your data in all the ways that you're giving this data to a corporation that doesn't care about you. Um, And so that's kind of how QSpaces was born. And at that point, even then, not everyone is on Facebook.
Right. Right. So
And so
as people are leaving Twitter and leaving Facebook, which is another 2023 trend that I've brought up and makes sense about social media users turning their back on the algorithm and community building in private spaces over the big platforms, seeing a rise of smaller platforms. It's like we need places like Q Spaces
yeah,
to congregate and to continue to solve this very ever present problem.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and like on the QSpaces roadmap, having a forum is a top priority, and I think getting people on there for a social component will drive more. Like people will go create an account if all their friends are there talking, and then hopefully the knock-on effect would be, you know, you're sharing your information, like something comes up around healthcare, and then you go onto the healthcare side of that and share those rating and reviews instead of them just being totally lost in a Facebook group somewhere.
Right,
Um,
right,
but
for
I
sure.
found that for I I think like marketing is a challenge for me and has been. I think that's also like I have like if I build it they will come, like Field of Dreams mentality when I
I
about
didn't shake
this
that out of you.
particular.
I didn't
Yeah,
shake that
no.
out of you.
Um, yeah, it's like, yeah, I know but when it comes down to it, like making Instagram posts and like doing all this stuff, and there's so many channels, and it's just as a team of one, the marketing in particular is like incredibly overwhelming. And if it comes down to two tasks and one's marketing and the other one isn't, I'm, you know, I play to my skill set.
Human
Um,
nature.
yeah, I need to hire someone.
Well, I always have ideas for you on how to get more people on the platform or things that
Okay.
you can do. So we can always have a conversation separately. We don't have to bore the Make Sense crowd with with that, although they might be interested. Tell us in the comments. I'm supposed to tell people like if you have more questions about this topic or you want to have any requests, please write them in the comments if you're on YouTube, or send me a message at hi@lindsayt.com. Kat, how can, whether we're allies or part of the community, how can we help you with Q Spaces and the broader kind of healthcare kind of equity?
Yeah, absolutely. I think in terms of Q spaces, it really is, if you're an ally, tell everyone you know about this resource. Um, you can tell your providers about it. They can add themselves to the database. And if you're in the LGBTQ community, or you have LGBTQ friends, please uh, use the platform. The more ratings and reviews, the more information that we're giving to the rest of the community to make better decisions for themselves and their health. And so it really is just it's a flywheel. The more people, the more users we have and writing reviews, the more valuable it becomes, and the more users will be pulled into it. And I want this to be a the first thing people will go to, and I want them to be able to find great healthcare. I don't want people
Mhm.
to struggle. Um, and yeah, use Q Spaces, talk about it, tell people.
And what's
QSpaces.org.
it? It's qspaces.org.
Yes.
All right, Q spaces spelled exactly as you would think .org. That's where you can rate and review doctors and healthcare providers, particularly specifically on how they treat LGBTQ plus community members. It's so important to share that information even more. So now with the legislation and the platform's compliance with, government, and making sure that we can confidently get healthcare to that community. So technology plays a huge, huge role in, communities finding each other, particularly when they are spread out and in places where it may be more dangerous than others to be together
Yeah.
and in person. And Q Spaces is playing that role for the LGBTQ plus community. Kat, you are amazing. Thank
You
you.
are.
Thank you so much. Where can people find you online besides Q Spaces? You're not on Twitter. Are you anywhere else?
Me personally.
Or, Q Spaces? It sounds
Uh,
like
Q
maybe
Spaces.
Instagram.
Q Spaces is on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, all at Q Spaces app.
Okay.
One word.
One word.
Yeah. So the business Q Spaces, I couldn't afford to leave those channels, but personally, Fuck Elon Musk and Twitter. I'm not on personally on
Got it.
Twitter.
All right, qspaces.org and QSpaces app on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you would like to volunteer with QSpaces as a marketing
Yeah.
person on
In
Instagram,
any
Kat
way,
welcomes the help for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. Hit me up. I need
Uh,
help.
So, thank you for listening to Make Sense with me, your host, Lindsay Tavis, and guest, Kat Hofmann, CEO and founder of QSpaces. As always, you can check out all the links and resources in the show notes. Final note. If you want to continue to be the smartest person in the room, make sure you're getting notified when each episode hits. On YouTube, hit that subscribe for next week's episode. And for audio, follow wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you, Kat, for joining me.
Yeah, thank you.
Oop.